I think it's really important that we celebrate the spaces that are doing well. I think it's important for the disabled community to have that information. I think we must share it with one another as well, because so often we get spaces telling us what we need, and I don't think that works. So I think when disabled people recommend to one another, we know instantly that we can trust it. Anywhere that's accessible is my favourite space. I loved the Brooklyn in Manchester. I thought it was incredible. I've just recently been to a Miller in the Maldives, which has made itself accessible, and for a sand island, and it's just phenomenal to see what's been achieved there. It's really important because not only does it show disabled people what's out there, it also shows the space, say the hotel for example, that it was worth their while doing it. That there is a return on that investment if they put the time in, if they put the money in, if they put the skill into adapting their properties correctly. I also think it's really important to name and shame, because it's not fair when businesses just get away with letting disabled customers down. I would also say that there's a way in which to go about naming and shaming. I personally prefer to escalate the complaint to as high as possible and then offer advice and say, look, how can we help you do this better? Because I think that's much more constructive, and I think that's the only way we'll start to removing those barriers of fear. Because I think a lot of the time places are accessible, but they're too scared to put their head above the parapet and say, we're really accessible, we're really inclusive, in case it goes wrong. So we need to equip them with the confidence to be able to admit when when they get it wrong and work out how to get it right. But also give them the confidence to ask that question, how can we make this experience more comfortable for you? And when you ask that of a guest, you give them the permission to tell you what their access requirements are. And I think then you can work out together how you meet them. And I think that's just the way forward. I've got so many stories of when things go wrong, or when things don't turn out as they should do. For example, I remember going to the Ritz once, and I remember arriving there and there was no access into the front. You had to go round through the bin area, but then if you wanted to book a room, you could only access the suite level room because that was the only room that they had made accessible. It was just so frustrating, the whole process, and it triggered a conversation around these exclusive spaces. What do they do to make themselves inclusive? And it turns out that it's quite normal for a number of very luxury hotels around the city in London to charge disabled people extra if they need an accessible room. But there's been so many stories for me when I just have been let down. For example, I went to stay at Soho House and they didn't have a shower chair in the accessible hotel room. And they said, oh, we have one plastic chair that we pass around to our guests that might need it to be placed into the wet room. But somebody else is using it at the moment, so you have to wait till they've finished, and then we'll lend it to you, but they might need it back. I was shocked. I've also had situations where the evacuation plan hasn't been put in place and I've been left. That's a really scary situation as well. I think the quickest way to improve accessibility is to speak with disabled people about how to meet our needs. I think it's to employ the right people, have decision makers be disabled, and if you don't have any in your organisation, don't just hire them as consultants, actually hire them into your team. I think train your staff to be more welcoming, understand how to speak to disabled people. That's really the first step, but it's almost the most important one. It starts with knowing what language to use and knowing how to use it. And I think that's, again, an easily solved problem that comes with conversations and creating a safe space where everyone can talk about these things and address the awkwardness in the room. But again, I think it's all about collaboration. For me, this is not about us and them. This is about all of us. I think one of the ways that we can make accessibility happen faster is if everybody in the world understands that disability is something that will happen to all of us. It might not be permanent like it is for, say, someone like me who has spinal injury, paralysis, but it will be, temporary for someone at some point. You will hurt yourself, you will become sick, you will encounter a problem where you will need the things that we're asking for, and you'll be grateful. So do it for you, for anybody. Design for one, design for all.